Hello, thank you so much for watching this or being here today to learn more about online safety. We are here today with Mr. Aaron Jurgen, and he's going to talk to us and teach us more about the internet safety that we need to know for our kids. I'm going to hand it over to him so that he can just jump right in. And thank you so much for your time and for being here today.
Good afternoon, everybody. Like Ms. Pricer said, my name is Aaron Jurgen. I am the school safety coordinator and school safety officer at St. Jude School in Hickson. Um, Previous to that, I was a school safety officer for Hamilton County Schools. I know some of these parents are from Washington Alternative School. I was actually the SSO at Washington Alternative School last school year until I came to St. Jude. And prior to that, I was a school resource deputy for the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office at Orchard Knob Middle School. So, what I want to talk to you about today is internet safety. Okay, everything's online today, and the technology is constantly evolving and changing. And sometimes it's hard to stay ahead of it and know what's the latest and greatest and newest. So, sometimes as parents, we may not know what our children are getting into when they're on their devices. So, for about the next hour or so, we'll spend going over just some tips and some stuff to look out for. Uh, but here we go. All right. What do your children do online? Right. Well, as somebody that has children, I can tell you they do everything online. As adults, we know you can shop online, um, you can talk to people online, you can watch Zoom presentations online, like we're doing now. All right. But a lot of people don't realize, I'm 41, almost 42 years old. I don't play video games anymore. Okay. I definitely don't play video games online with people I don't know. Right. But our kids do. All right. And that was even as someone that works in this space, as a father, that was very eye opening to me. All right. Just how prevalent that is. Technology can't catch everything. So we have to communicate. That's the biggest thing, guys. We have to know what our kids are doing. All right. And I've given this talk before and I've given it at schools in person. And a lot of the feedback I get are from parents, and they're like, well, you don't understand. A lot of times they'll be like, you don't understand how hard it is. Trust me. And I'm not judging anyone. I empathize with you. I do understand how hard it is. I really, really do. But I think sometimes we have to remember we're our children's parents. We're not their buddies. All right. We have to go through those devices. All right. Now, do you have to start out doing that? Of course not. One of the easiest things you can do is make it a safe space where your children will be open to come and talking to you. Some of the stuff that we're going to talk about later, a lot of it, a lot of the people that engage in these behaviors that are criminal, they rely on the fact that children are afraid to get in trouble, so they won't come and talk to their parents about it. All right, and it's to very detrimental effects. So the very first thing you can do is just communicate with your children. All right. Ask them, hey, what game is that? Or, hey, who are you playing with online? How do you know that person? Is that one of your friends from school? Or is this someone you don't know other than in the gaming world? All right. Kids want to hear about these topics from parents and caregivers, right? And I know sometimes, like, for instance, one of my children is a teenager. Okay. And, when you become the parent of a teenager, you know, they like, you're not cool anymore. They just want you to get away from them, right? And they kind of put this persona out that they think they've got it all figured out. All right. And we were all 14, 15, 16 years old at one point in time. And guess what? We know now at, 42, we didn't have it all figured out. All right. Um, but believe it or not, as someone that worked in school safety and before as someone that worked in law enforcement, dealing with these types of incidents and some of these crimes, when we talk to these children, when we talk to the students, when it's all said and done, smoke's cleared, a lot of them would admit, man, I wish I'd have talked to my mom or dad about that. Or I wish they had taught me, you know, certain things to look out for. So even though they may put this persona out like they don't need your help, they do. And believe it or not, they want it. They want that structure.
The volume's not working on this end for some reason.
You hear the bell.
No.
All right. Well, unfortunately, that's probably my fault because as much as I look at the stuff, sometimes I don't know how to work printers or laptops. All right. But basically, what that is a TikTok video of a young man, looks like he's a teenager, with his mom. And he's just admitting, hey, mom, I wish you would have talked to me about these kind of things. So again, they're going to try to be all hard on the yard on you and act like they don't need you, right? But they do. All right. So please, 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 please talk to your kids about this stuff. All right. But what are some of the online risks? Okay. Inappropriate content, privacy, online enticement. We'll talk about that in depth. Sexting and sextortion. Sextortion is becoming more and more of a problem. Um, and I've seen it all the way down to middle school students. So it's not a young adult or high school age student problem anymore. It's happening in middle schools. Um, and then, of course, cyberbullying. All right. Some of this stuff is age appropriate. So if you have younger kids, you can talk about netiquette. And what netiquette is basically how you act online. All right. And it's something as simple as, how do you use a computer? All right. That's covered by netiquette. All right. Um, how do you log into your email? Passwords, stuff of that nature. That's what netiquette is. It's basically basic operations of how to interface with the online world. All right. Um, Younger children will be exposed to inappropriate content. All right. It's everywhere. It is everywhere. And if you don't know how algorithms work, um, matter of fact, here's a pro tip for anybody out there that has Netflix. There is a phenomenal documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. All right. So if you have Netflix, watch The Social Dilemma, and it basically tells you, it explains to you how these applications and these systems, how their algorithm works. And what I mean by that is, have you ever been online, say on Amazon, looking shopping, and then next thing you know, any ad that pops up for the next week while you're online is that thing you were looking for when you were shopping? Okay. The applications, the internet, the computers, they track that stuff. All right. So you will start to see more ads like that. So for instance, if your child, say they do end up looking, whether it's, on purpose or it's through accident, they start looking at inappropriate content because of the algorithm, more and more inappropriate content will be fed to them. So you have to be on guard against that stuff. All right. Pop ups and passwords. All right. Talk to your kids about how to design an adequate password. All right. And there are good apps out there that will do it for you. And for those of you that maybe have a laptop that has a Microsoft operating system, it will recommend very stringent passwords, right? That's an option you have. If you have a Google Chromebook, Chrome will do the same thing as well. If you want to just make your own password, which some of us still do, all right, um, I would suggest making it, and I know this is a lot, but make it no less than 15 characters. All right. Make it no less than 15 characters. Make sure you have uppercase, lowercase letters, numbers, and special symbols. Okay. Um, because what happens are people that, say, for instance, hackers, someone trying to break into your computer or into your personal information, right? they use applications, they use other computer software that will basically try to guess your password, right? And if they already have enough information on you, because it's online and you can find it, right? They can guess your password. Well, some of these other applications, or like I said, by making your password more than 15 characters, it actually prevents those hacking computer software systems from being able to decipher your password. All right. Um, Also, the plural form of a word. So, for instance, I'm not saying make your password, Apple, right? Don't do that, right? But if you're going to make it apples, right? The computer systems that try to decipher passwords have a problem with the plural of the word. All right. And this last bullet for younger children is very important. Okay. Unfortunately, we're having to have these conversations with our children younger and younger that they just can't trust everybody they meet online. All right. They can't. Just like, unfortunately, as a school safety officer, I have, as a school safety officer at St. Jude, I have some of the most respectful and well behaved young men and women uh, that are students here. And what do they all almost always do? If they see an adult walking toward the building, they will hold the door open for them. Right. And I love it as a father, and I teach my kids the same thing. But as a school safety officer, I have to tell them why we can't just open the door for random people outside. Right. Same thing with your kids online. When they're in these online gaming rooms, right? They can't trust everybody. All right. When it comes to teens, cyberbullying is a real thing. Although I will say, unfortunately, it's a real thing for younger children as well. I just read a news story just yesterday where a 10-year-old boy committed suicide due to cyberbullying. Okay. You know, and it's sad because when I was a child, we didn't have the internet in this form. All right. By the time the internet came along, I was already a teenager and it was horrible. If your mom was on the phone, your computer didn't work, right? Or dial up. Okay. So if we would get bullied at school, when we got home, the bullying stopped, unless they were going to call you on the phone. But then, if you were like me, you had one phone and it was in the kitchen where everybody could see it. They had to risk your mom or dad picking up the phone, so they weren't going to do that, right? Unfortunately, with these devices, kids can be bullied 24/7. All right, if they have a device of some sort, whether it be a tablet, a computer, or a phone, they can be bullied 24/7. That's another big reason as to why you have to, every once in a while, you need to take your kids' devices or you need to ask them about their day. All right. And you have to create a safe space so they can show you maybe some of this content. Just let them know that, hey, I'm not mad at you. You're not going to get in trouble. But, you know, it's okay for you to tell me what's going on. All right. Sexting is a big thing. All right. And we are starting to see it younger and younger. Um, when I was a school resource officer, for the sheriff's office, and like I said, I worked at a middle school. We dealt with this in middle school. Okay, I think children don't realize a few things. They don't realize that once that picture gets out there, very rarely can they ever come back. Okay. Matter of fact, I had a young lady who had sent a compromising photo of herself to a little boy who sent it out to everybody on the football team. And it actually took us bringing in the FBI to try to get all of that stuff back. And guess what? They still didn't get all of it. This young lady well, she's probably graduated by now, but at least a couple of years ago, she was in high school. And a, a fellow student in high school who did not go to middle school with her said, hey, is this you? Right. And also, as a former law enforcement officer, I don't think children realize the legal ramifications of that. Okay, that is a thing. All right, moms and dads, you may not realize it either. If a child takes a compromising photo of themselves or makes a compromising video of themselves, all right, and then they send it to someone, right, whether that be a friend, boyfriend, or girlfriend, okay, they have just transmitted child pornography. Okay, it's just something you need to be aware of. All right, you need to have these conversations with your students. All right. Um, when it comes to posting personal information online, all right, that's something that even adults we should don't do that. Okay. Um, I'll give you a this is a real story. This is a real example. When I was a sheriff's deputy, I had to answer a call as a call for service at the residence. And when I got done and I'd left the residence for my report, I realized I'd forgotten to get the reporting party's phone number. And by the time I realized it, I was quite a ways away. So before I turned around and drove all the way back out there, I Googled her. And guess what? Her home phone number, which I needed legitimately, came up, as well as her address. Well, that means anybody can get her phone number and her address. All right. Just like with your students, with your children. All right. Working in the school safety space, I, I caution students and parents, right? Don't make your social media profiles public. Okay. Um, and that's something that we dealt with here at St. Jude. I gave this talk basically to our students. And, you know, for the students here that had, say Instagram accounts, by the end of the class, I was teaching the students how to make their Instagram accounts private, right? Because when a profile is public, okay, that means anyone of any age, anywhere in the world can look at your content, okay? So, moms and dads, for instance, if you go on a beach vacation and you're in your swimsuit and your children are in their swimsuit, and either them, either yours or your child's social media account is public, that means anyone, any kind of offender of any nature can look at it. And I'm not trying to scare anyone, but as someone who worked in law enforcement, we would interview sex offenders. And say, for instance, someone's offense was against, say, hypothetically, a 12-year-old girl. And we said, how did you key in on this person? I found them on social media and I just started looking at their pictures, and that's where it started. Okay. And then what does that lead to? If it leads to contact with a child, at some point they're going to want to try to meet offline. They're going to want to try to meet somewhere outside of the internet space. That is a no go. So before it gets to that point, moms and dads, we have to have these tough conversations on the front end with our children. Okay. And sometimes that means going through their devices. I, as someone that works in this space and that is also a parent, I like to think I have that kind of relationship with my children, right? But I'm around enough teenage students to know you can have the best relationship with your child in the world. And from time to time, they'll still lie to your face, right? So, what do I mean by that? Well, that means randomly, I will go into my 15-year-old son's room and say, let me have your cell phone, buddy. It just is what it is, right? Also, if you're going to post pictures of your family or yourself, say at a vacation or at a restaurant, do not do that in real time. Okay. I always like to joke, like no one cares that you're at Olive Garden eating breadsticks, right? But if you decide to put that online, all right, don't do it while you're at Olive Garden eating breadsticks. Okay. That lets someone know where you're at. All right. Do it after the fact. Okay. Probably can't hear that one either. All right. Sorry about that. I'm sure that is my fault. All right. But it is important to start these conversations when they're young. All right. And it starts with building that foundation, that relationship. All right. They have to be able to trust you, mom and dad. All right. Even though maybe they did something wrong and maybe there will be some kind of punishment associated with that. Right. You still have to work to make them comfortable enough to know that they need to tell you. All right. And we start that young. Matter of fact, and I'm not trying to sell this to anyone. I'm just saying it's an option you have. Um, my oldest son has a cell phone, and he is a good kid. And I wish he didn't have a cell phone at this point. Knowing what I know now about how algorithms work and everything, and seeing a lot of the mental health issues that are associated with social media use, um, I wish he didn't do it. So my wife and I, and again, to each their own, we're not allowing our younger children to have cell phones until they get to a certain age. And then it's probably going to be able to just talk and text to get a hold of mom and dad, right? So if you have a younger child who does not have a device yet, that might just be something you want to think about. Okay. All right. Some inappropriate content. What are examples? Pornography, things with excessive violence, hate speech, or risky or illegal behaviors. All right. And again, you know, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the majority of you all, your children are not looking at pornography 24/7, right? Even if they've seen it, been exposed to it in the past, I'm sure they're not just constantly looking at it, right? However, how many videos, how many YouTubes, how many World Star Hip Hops, how many anything, excessive violence, right? Or risky or illegal behaviors. Okay. Again, the way algorithms work, the more they watch that stuff, the more they get fed that stuff. All right. Um, I always like to tell people we become our thoughts, right? So if you are constantly watching something that has excessive violence or is hateful, right, that is who you're going to become. And if the algorithm keeps feeding you that stuff, feeding you that kind of content, it's going to become a real issue, and it could lead to criminal issues, mental health issues, right? So that's just stuff that you need to be mindful of. All right. How to be a trusted adult. Listen, like I always say, um, you know, your creator gave you two ears and one mouth, right, for a reason. All right. Listen. All right. Practice active listening. All right. And if they do actually come to you and disclose this issue they're having, right, be ready to help them. The biggest thing here I say it says remain calm. And trust me, I'm a parent too. If my kid came to me with something that I railed against that they should not do, and they're like, "Dad, I did this," it's going to be hard for me to remain calm because I'm like, I've been telling you since 2015, man. Whatever. All right, but you have to, right? You have to, because that way they'll be more apt to come to you in the future. Because the minute you go high into the ride or off the rails, they're going to shut down. And if they have any future issues, they're not going to come to you about it. All right. Teach them respect. Teach them how to set boundaries. All right. Whether it's young men or young women. All right. This is where moms and dads have to kind of start thinking about, those conversations about, teaching young men and young women to be respectful of their bodies. Okay. And there's no need to share images with everybody. All right. Because again, they're not coming back once they're out there, guys. They're not. All right. So, what are some stuff you can do? A, don't frighten them. Stay calm. All right. Um, and it's not their fault. Let them know it is not their fault. All right. Especially if there's an adult somewhere that is soliciting this behavior. That adult has committed the offense. That adult has committed the crime. Your child, your student is the victim. All right. You have to reassure them of that they're not going to get in trouble. Okay. And help them report it. And that could be something as easy as letting a teacher know, letting a school administrator know, letting law enforcement know. Okay. One of the best things you can do, your child, let them know that as soon as any of this behavior, they start to identify this behavior online, okay, turn their phone off. Immediately turn their phone off. All right. Um, and tell an adult. Okay. There are steps that law enforcement can take, especially if we're talking about maybe an adult talk them into sending an explicit image. There are steps as long as you tell an adult, all right, turn off the phone or put your phone in airplane mode. Okay. Um, there are steps that law enforcement can take to try to track down that offending party. Okay. You can also let the creators of the website or the application know that, hey, this behavior is going on. This is the screen name of the person that's doing this behavior. And they will also take their own internal action. But I always tell people, especially when it comes to explicit images, Okay. Because we live in a crazy world these days, right? Don't be afraid to tell law enforcement because that app is at some point it's there's a corporation up there. It's about money. And we never know what they're going to do. We know what they should do, but we never know what they're really going to do if you report it to them. I'm not saying don't report it to them, but I'm saying in addition, please do not be afraid to tell law enforcement. Because as a former law enforcement officer, I would tell you that a lot of these people that are trying to entice these images from minors are doing it to multiple minors at the same time. All right. So it's not like if they stop doing it to you, they're not going to stop doing it to somebody, that they're going to stop doing it to somebody else. They're not. More than likely, they're working multiple individuals at the same time. All right. So we talked about privacy settings. All right. You can put all your social media accounts on private. What does that mean? What does that actually look like? It means if I'm on Facebook or say Instagram and I see, Miss Sandy's got an account. I'm like, I want to follow Sandy or I want to follow Rise Up. Well, I won't be able to see any of her content. I have to request access to it. And then she'll get a notification and say, hey, do you want to add Officer Jurgen? She's either yes or no, right? That's how that works, right? Because without that, then like I said, if your account's open, anyone can see it. They can see anything you post. All right. You also, in these applications, you have the option to block someone. And that's as easy as clicking on their profile and hitting block. That stops them from seeing your account at all. Okay. And then we've talked about reporting. All right. We've talked about some of this already. Inappropriate behavior, illegal behavior, offensive language, threats, and violence. All right. Underage drinking and drug use. Right. It's out there. We know what it looks like when we see it. All right. And then hate speech. All right. And again, the more they look at it, the more the algorithm will feed it to them. All right. That's why having these again, and I'll probably say it 2 or 3 more times throughout the slideshow. Those early conversations are the most important. Okay. When it comes to online privacy, what's okay, what's not okay? Sure, sharing pictures of yourself with friends or family. And when I say friends, I mean like real life friends. Okay. Probably okay. All right. Not somebody that you game with that lives in Wisconsin. Right. I'm not saying they're not a good person, but you don't know that. Okay. Again, conversations with unknown people in an online game. This actually happened to me in real life. All right. And it scared me, guys. I was in the living room and I heard my son talking to somebody in his bedroom. And th- there was no one else in his room. So in my mind, I'm like, man, because I heard an adult's voice. And I rushed into his bedroom and I'm expecting to see him corresponding somehow with an adult. Luckily, that's not what happened. I have found out that not only do kids play games, they watch YouTube videos of other random people playing video games. And that's all he was doing. But that's not where my mind went at first, right? So I was like, ooh, thank the Lord, right? Um, but just know, again, this kind of goes back to not everybody's your friend. All right. We have to have that conversation. All right. We've talked about checking in or sharing content, locate current location online. Just don't do it. Just if you really want to share your vacation video photos, cool. But don't do it while you're on vacation. All right. Please don't. All right. Again, when it comes to personal information, um, there are some things that you can do. All right. There is a company that I'm aware of that I've used personally in the past. It's called Delete Me. Um, not trying to sell them to you. I don't have a financial stake in the thing, but they work to basically take all your personal information offline. You can do it yourself, but it takes forever. And you have to constantly do it about every 6 weeks or so many months, right? Um, but for instance, there's just some stuff in this world that's public information, whether we want it to be or not, right? Um, so like if you own your house, the deed to your house, right? That's public information, believe it or not, right? And if someone knows where to look, they can find your home address, right? Well, what a lot of these they're called data mining. What a lot of these data mining companies do is they go around and they collect it's called open source intelligence. They collect all the open source information they can on people, and it becomes a one-stop shop, right? Like, for instance, outside of St. Jude, I'm a licensed private investigator. If through that I'm trying to do work and try to find somebody, I can go to these subscription services, type in their information, and it'll give me a list of what's public information, but all in one spot. Okay. There are ways that you can get that stuff taken off, right? But again, it's tedious work. All right. So the best thing to do that up front is not just give it out. Again, some stuff you can't help, right? Some stuff is in some type of government record and it's public knowledge if someone bothers to go look at it, right? But some stuff is not. But maybe you signed up for, I don't know, a subscription service, or you signed up for, who knows what, and you had to enter your email address and you had to enter your phone number, your address, or whatever you had to enter. Well, then say at some point that company that you enter that, like say the grocery store, right? Because everybody has those little grocery, like key things. Okay. Well, you sign up when you go to the grocery store and you sign up for that, right? To get your little like my little Publix one, right? I got to put all my information down, right? Well, what if, and if you don't know, Publix or whatever company stores all that data. If a hacker ever breaks into their system, they steal all that data, and it just winds up online. So again, I'm not telling you don't sign up for. I'm not telling you not to sign up for your grocery store cards. I'm just saying just know what you're doing when you sign up for them. Okay. Another thing when it comes to phone numbers, all right, look at getting especially for people that you don't know or you don't know intimately, like family and close friends. But say you have to give out for whatever reason, you have to give out a phone number, right? Look at maybe getting a Google Voice number or a phone number that is not your actual phone number, but any calls or messages sent to it will be forwarded to your legitimate phone number. That way you can always get it, but that person doesn't have your actual real phone number. All right. Another thing, again, some of this we've already went over. All right. But stalking is an issue, online stalking. Okay. What does that look like? Well, it could look like maybe it's somebody that you legitimately were friends with at some point. You're in gaming, right? And then through your relationship through the gaming platform, you divulge personal information. And then maybe one day they're not your friend, but now they know everything about you. Okay. Um, Based on crime data, the majority of stalkers, if it's a female victim, right? Most of the offenders will be male. Okay. When it comes to male victims, it's about 50-50, whether it'll be a male or female. There's the reasons behind that that we won't go into. But so and you have to remember when you're at these businesses and you're giving them your card number, personal information, your phone number, right? Most people that experience some kind of violence in their life, say a violent assault in their life, most people are known to the attacker in some form or fashion, whether you as the victim realize it or not. Now, what do I mean by that? Say you go to Starbucks, it could be your barista, but say you go to Starbucks every day and get the same thing every time you go, and it's always the same barista. You may not ever realize, like, that's just my person that does my coffee. But now they know all about you, and you may not realize that. Okay, so they know you in some form or fashion, whether you realize it or not. All right. What can you do? Establish rules about what they can share. A colleague of mine at St. Jude, one of the teachers, I think what she does is phenomenal. Um, her children are grown now, but she allowed them to get social media accounts when they were in high school. But they had to follow. A, they had to make it private. And then B, they had to follow her or let her follow him so that she could see everybody that they follow and all the content that they post. Right. She just related to me just last week that now her son is a grown man and he still does it. Right. So You never know, when you start these habits early enough, they can work out for you. Here's a big one. Talk about a friends list. Like mom or dad, when we see, say our child has opened up to us and we are, or they are transparent about who they're online with. If there's somebody you don't recognize, ask them, like, how do you know this person? Right? Do you go to school with them or do they play sports with you? Like, how do you know this person? Right? That's a big one. I've noticed from my time in law enforcement that a lot of this is numbers driven. People will follow anybody and they will let anybody follow them. Right? Um, Moms and dads, as a school resource officer, that's how I've caught some students committing crimes because they will let anybody follow them. And then I just watch. Right? Now, you're like, well, how did you do that? They knew you were the SRO. I did. I had an investigatory account, right? Basically, I had a fake account, and that's how I'd keep an eye on my students, right? But just think about it like this: I was doing it for something good and legitimate. There are predators out there that do the same thing for predatory reasons. Something to keep in mind. All right. Online enticement. All right. What that is, it involves an individual communicating with someone believed to be a child via the internet with intent to commit a sexual offense or abduction. All right. And this includes sextortion. All right. What I will say is in our area, when it comes to, say, uh, sex trafficking, okay, we don't have in this area, the what you think of as a creepy van pulling up on somebody on the road and snatching them off the road. Now, has it happened? Yeah, it has. The majority of sex trafficking in our area starts out with grooming. And a lot of it starts out with online grooming. Okay. So just be mindful of it. All right. They will start out being nice, being friendly. Maybe they'll start out with your child thinking it's another student, right? They'll, and they'll play it out. They'll play the long game. I mean, they'll play it over weeks and months, right? And if they can ever get that child comfortable enough to meeting them somewhere outside the home, offline, that's where the abduction happens, right? And when it comes to sex trafficking, once the child is taken, after about 48 to 72 hours, they're gone. Okay. They're gone. And if you don't know, the number one sex trafficking place in the entire world, not just the United States, is Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. And we are an hour and a half north of Atlanta, Georgia. So just be mindful. Again, it goes back to having those hard conversations with your kids and from time to time going through their devices and asking some uncomfortable questions. All right. So how do the solicitations occur when we're talking about stuff like trafficking? All right. They start out on social media sites. All right. I have talked to older students at other schools, and they just don't see a big deal about it. They don't see a problem with sending an explicit image to a friend, and some of them, believe it or not, don't see a problem with sending it to a stranger. All right, you have to remember, okay, once it's out there, 9 times out of 10, we're not going to get it back. All right, and a lot of times that's not an actual child. That's not an actual another child they're communicating with. All right. Offenders groom children because the way they do it is kids are naturally curious. All right. And maybe they'll start out as playing a game, or maybe they'll want to send them something cool, or maybe maybe they're both playing Minecraft and they want to teach them how to build this cool, you know, thing on Minecraft, right? And they're like, oh, well, this person's really cool. Mom, Daddy showed me how to build this or that or the other thing, right? Then, right, they'll gradually start to introduce explicit images. All right. Then they'll continue it by saying, well, if you tell your mom or dad, you're going to get in trouble. Right. Right. And then that's where sextortion will come into play. And what sextortion is where they basically, it's extortion. They extort the child to send them pornographic images or to meet them somewhere outside of the home, right? And then what do? Sometimes they want to entice them with gifts, okay, to get them out of the home or to get them to send the image. Or once they've committed the act, they will try to keep them quiet by buying gifts. All right. So again, what are some of the things we can look out for? Well, I got caught shoplifting one time as a child. I'll admit it. All right. You know how it was, how it's easy to get caught shoplifting, right? When you grow up poor and you show up with some stuff that your mom or dad know they didn't buy for you, right? Okay. Same when it comes to this kind of stuff. If you see your kid having a new toy, a new game, a new set of kicks, or just something, and you know you didn't buy it for them, you need to start asking questions. All right. Grooming, we've talked about that. But again, I'll briefly go over it. All right. They're nice to them. They send them gifts. All right. Once they get a baseline level of comfort, right, they'll start introducing sexual content or asking for sexual images. All right. Um, one thing that I've told my children is if an adult, other than, mom or dad, so
please have Delaney Saba to the office. Delaney Saba to the office, please. Thank you.
if an adult, other than me or my wife, maybe a select very few other people, ever ask you to keep a secret, you need to immediately come tell me. Okay. Because no one should be asking a child that is not theirs to keep a secret from their own parents. All right. When you see a lot of times we'll see case studies or news stories of maybe the offender was, you know, unfortunately a member of clergy or a teacher or something of that nature. They'll ask them to keep a secret. Negative, 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 negative. All right. We don't do that. Okay. Then I'll hit on this. It says they turn them against their family and friends. They will start to. They'll be like, well, you're going to get in trouble. Or they'll say something like, your mom and dad, they don't care about you. I'm the one that cares about you. Can't you see all this stuff I've gotten you? Right? That's a way to get them, A, to not share stuff with you that they should. And B, that's another way to get them out of the house. Right? What are some signs of grooming? Right? Again, I've talked about it a little bit earlier, but they'll start showing up with gifts that you don't know where they came from. All right. Um, they'll start getting phone calls from unknown phone numbers. All right. Um, they'll start rejecting family and friends. Okay. This is a big one. They'll get upset when they're not online. All right. That's a big one, right? Because unfortunately, psychologically, a bond, if it's far enough in the grooming process, a bond will start to develop between the suspect and the victim, the offender and the victim. And they'll actually get upset if they don't get to spend, if they don't get to communicate with them. All right. But again, the big thing is you have to, before it gets to that point, because once it gets to that point, it can become extremely difficult to ever get your child back psychologically where they need to be. Okay. You have to do some of this other stuff that may be uncomfortable on the front end. You have to ask the hard questions. You have to be a little nosy. But remember, we're mom and dad. We're not best friends. Okay. It's different. Okay. You set the tone in your house. All right. So talk to your child about the relationships they have with other people. All right. Um, set a policy about, who they can meet offline when it's older kids, right? Um, know who your child's online, quote unquote, online friends are. All right. The stuff that we went over in this slideshow, right? Share it with your students, share it with your child, let them know what to look out for. Okay. Again, do not be afraid to notify law enforcement. Again, I'm not telling you not to notify other people. I'm not telling you not to notify the gaming company or the app company or school administrators. I'm not telling you not to notify those people. Please do. However, in addition to that, please notify law enforcement. All right. And believe it or not, this is real. Okay, this really happened. All right. But once you've had these conversations with your child and you've had this training with your child, right? They will turn people down. All right. Um, and this is basically what you're looking at here. And it says at the bottom, child stopped communicating and made a report to the social media networking site. And that networking site actually turned it into the cyber tip line. The cyber tip line is run by the FBI. So again, children that you have these conversations with, again, and whether they tell you or not, they want to have this kind of conversation with you. They want this information because they're trying to navigate this stuff, right? Um, if you can successfully do that, they can take action like this. Okay. Okay. And this is the cyber tip line. It's on here. It's cybertipline.org, right? It's a partnership between the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and the FBI, and their phone number is 1-800 the lost. All right. If any of this happens, anyone who sends your child photos or videos containing obscene content, anyone who asks your child to send sexual images, all right, anyone that has a sexual conversation with your child or that wants to meet the child in person, you need to report that. Again, and I get it. I'm a father. I'm a husband and a father. If I caught this going on in my home, I would have some very choice words for this individual, right? But that's not where it needs to stop, mom and dad. All right. You need to report it because, again, even if you save your child, they're working more than one child at the same time. Okay. Again, also, this is kind of outside the purview of this slideshow, but I will also caution single mothers. Okay. Um, they will get to your children. Like if you have an open social media account, a lot of them through case studies and post incident law enforcement interviews have disclosed that that's how they did what they did. They befriended the mother. Okay. They befriended the mother. All right. Um, so I'm not saying it's never happened to fathers. I'm sure it has, but this specific case study had to do with mothers. So that's why I'm speaking on it. So just be mindful of that. Okay. When it comes to sexting, I think we all know what that is. That's sending nude photos or posting nude photos. All right. It says almost 20% of teens have sexted. All right. And about 35% have said they've received a sexual text. All right. It's prevalent in our society. And I know I've harped on it a lot since we've been here. You can't get those pictures back. Okay. That's where conversations about respecting your body and respecting boundaries need to come into play, mom and dad. Okay. Some reasons why: they think it's funny, they don't think it's a big deal, they want to send it to their significant other, right? Or peer pressure, right? Peer pressure. Okay. Um, and again, it's I have I have 4 sons and a daughter. Okay. And uh, I couldn't imagine what sometimes, now that I have a young daughter, a lot of this stuff is I key in on it more probably than I did with my sons. Um, I couldn't imagine what that's going to be like, how she would feel about something, or what we would have to address. Like, it would break my heart. But let your daughters know that if someone's threatening you, they're like, "Oh, well, you don't love me, or we're going to break up if you don't do this," that's not the person for them, anyways, right? And they need to report it to you. They need to report it to a teacher. You guys need to report it. Okay. All right. What are some consequences of sexting? All right. Again, it's going to be out there, and more people than the person you intended on seeing it is probably going to see it. right? So there's going to be some humiliation there. All right. Bullying. They could blackmail you. This is a big thing, right? This is more.
May I please have Sam come to the office for just a moment? Sam, come to the office for just a moment, please. Thank you.
This is more along the lines of sextortion. But what they'll do is say, you know, if you, say they talk the student, and this has happened to adults as well, but they talk the individual into sending an explicit image, right? And then they basically ransom. They'll be like, if you don't give me X amount of money, I'm going to send this to, and then they've done their homework, so they have all the pictures of all the accounts of your friends and family, and they're going to send this photo to them if you don't send me, $300, $3,000, right? And that has led children and young adults to committing suicide. All right. Also, just know that if you do this at school, it is a school discipline problem. Okay. Also, if you send it, again, we talked about it earlier, you have actually technically transmitted child pornography, all right, depending on some variables. But more times than not, that's what you've done. There could be police involved. And again, I'm not trying to scare anyone, but I don't think people realize the consequences of that. That through what you thought was silly and dumb, right, or no big deal, now you're a juvenile sex offender. And that affects the rest of your life, right? I've said it already, but I'll say it again. Start these conversations early. All right. I've given you some real life examples. All right. I think this is best. I know schools have programs. I think it's best between parents to children, but have conversations about healthy sexual relationships. All right. Mom and dad, that starts in the home before it starts anywhere else. Okay. And again, don't be afraid to report it, right? Do not be afraid to report it. I can't stress that enough. Do not be afraid to report it because your student is the victim. Okay. We talked about sextortion. We talked about trying to gain money. All right. What you can do is if you're getting sextorted, do not comply with the demands. All right. But do not delete your account because if law enforcement comes in to do an investigation, they will need that as well. All right. I know that might be the quickest thing. Just delete your account. Don't do that. Okay. There's a website here again, the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, missingkids.org. All right. You can go to this website and you can actually do a search to see if maybe you have sent explicit images. You can see if they're out there. All right. And you can take steps to get them back. All right. Another caveat to that, this is for the parents out there, specifically the parents. If you have ever shared an explicit image with another adult, say you're in a relationship with, all right, and then you guys are no longer in a relationship, and that they put your explicit image out there to the public, okay, that is now against the law. It's a version of disorderly conduct. All right, just so you know. All right. Again, and I'll end with this, cyberbullying, okay? It can be something as simple as sending mean tweets or photoshopping a legitimate picture of you into something that's hurtful, all right? We have started to see this where, say, they take they're able to get rid of one bully profile, they'll just create a fake profile and keep bullying you, all right? That's why I really do think for some of you that if maybe your child